Hi everyone, welcome. Welcome to Leisrealtalk live stream. Happy Thursday, happy Friday. Thank you for joining me wherever you are. Um, yeah, somebody commented that I now speak English with a little bit accent. I don't know where, I don't know where what happened. Um, maybe I struggle with English more now than before. Who knows? I go through these different phases. Well, sorry if I speak with an accent. I do have an accent. So, all right. So we'll talk about this new law China passed. It will be effective July 1. So we are only less than 2 months away from seeing this new anti-espionage law. Because the definition of the law is very vague, it has caused many discussions about what the CCP means by espionage and what Beijing considers dangers to national security. And because of its vagueness, the law's execution is subject to various interpretations. So to people living outside China, what does this mean? Right? What's the impact on our business in China? Um, and I think the question that I want to ask is, will people become a spy inadvertently without being aware? So we will discuss tonight. First of all, we'll discuss how is the Chinese anti-espionage law different from its Western counterparts, and then we'll talk about the impact on people living inside China, on Chinese people, followed by the impact on foreign businesses, mostly service companies or professional service firms. And then at the very end, I'll talk about what does Beijing want to accomplish from this. Um, okay, all right. People are still joining. Excellent. So anti-espionage law isn't special to China. Other countries almost all have their own version of the law. But their laws have clear definition about what intelligence is and what espionage is. For example, in the United States, intelligence is defined as classified information within a specific time limit. And all social information, including trade secrets, are not considered intelligence, right? They're industrial intelligence, but they're not state intelligence. A spy is usually defined as somebody who's paid or employed by a foreign government. Um, that's what that's what our understanding of a spy is. They're usually sent by a government or a foreign government to collect classified information. Now, Chinese anti-espionage law, however, is quite different. The biggest difference is the law is governed by the ruling Communist Party. Article 2 of the law stated that I'm just reading you, counter-espionage activity or efforts must adhere to the party's central and unified leadership. It means that the law is defined by the party, it controlled by the party, and also serves the party. In a democratic country, law is developed by the legislative body and enforced by the judicial system. But in China, the law is developed by and enforced by the same organization, which is the CCP, the party, and of course aims to protect the same party, the CCP. So that's the first major difference. And the second difference is it's very vague and didn't define how to interpret. For example, you have the subjective intent of the crime, right? You have the objective behavior or the object of aggression of the crime. You need to have different interpretation of the criminal's intent, behavior, objectives, right? Before you could build a case. But all of that is not in the Chinese law. And so the act of espionage can only be arbitrarily interpreted. Now, the third difference is the Chinese law defines intelligence as state secrets. So Article 14 says any individual and organization shall not illegally obtain, hold documents, data, information, items that belong to state secrets. So, okay, so what is state secrets, right? If you say anyone or any organization should not illegally obtain, illegally obtain. I mean, you can legally obtain. You cannot obtain it illegally, but you cannot hold document, data, information, item that belong to state secrets. So, what is state secrets? It's not defined. And then Article 15 says any individual and organizations should not illegally produce, sell, hold, use special spy equipment for espionage activities. But what is espionage activities? And then it says special spy equipment is defined by the State Security Department of the State Council in accordance with relevant state regulations. So it says that spy equipment is defined by the State Council or to be defined by State Council. So someone made an analogy, like if you are a Western journalist, you talk to a Chinese and ask them how much money they make a month. And that if that person tells you, well, he makes 5,000 yuan a month, and that could be disclosing state secret if that person works, let's say, in a sensitive industry, right? Or if you interview, let's say, somebody who works at the crematoriums or the funeral homes during the peak days of the pandemic in winter, and ask them how many hours do you work a day? How many people? What capacity are you at? And if that person answers your question, he or she could be revealing state secret. And the equipment you use to do that interview, let's say a recorder, that could be considered a spy equipment. So all of that could be illegal, subject to interpretation of this law. So I think the so-called state secret is really CCP's secret. It's not China's secret. It's the CCP's secret, including its rumors, scandals, and any dirty laundries. All right. So what does this law mean to people living inside China? I want to share with you a man by the name of Huang Qi. He is, I have a slide for him, made for him. Here we go. Make this bigger. Here we go. So this is I just took a screenshot of his website and with his picture. So he started in October 1998 with his wife, the first professional tracing agency and the first tracing website in China. And basically, it's a tracing agency is the organization that looks for missing people. And it's called Tianwang Tracing. And later they renamed it to June 4th, Tianwang.com, or China Tianwang Human Rights Affairs Center. His organization is dedicated to helping people with no power, no influence, and no name. Basically people who struggle at the bottom of the social strata. And he focused on human rights situation of migrant petitioners, Falun Gong practitioners, ethnic minorities, and others. And after the 2008 Sichuan earthquake, he investigated the substandard construction projects known as the tofu drag buildings that killed many children. He was arrested and sentenced multiple times. First in 2000, that's less than 2 years after he started his NGO. He was arrested and sentenced to 5 years. In 2008, he was arrested again and sentenced to 3 years. And in November 2016, he was taken away from his home and has been detained since. His crime is revealing state secrets. And it went like this. So someone from the state security or the public security bureau or the local public security bureau sent him a recorded speech by officials from the provincial security department. I don't know the intent of sending him. Maybe someone want to help him. And it was a phone instruction given to the lower level police, asking them to target Huang Qi, this gentleman in the picture, giving orders to ask them to target him in their tasks. And Mr. Huang published this recording, this recorded speech. And so he was sentenced for leaking state secret. So basically, he released the evidence. He released the recording that shows that the authorities was going to persecute him, and the authorities accuse him of breaking the law. And then the biggest joke is that the authorities asked another government agency called the Sichuan Provincial Secrecy Department. China has an organization that manages all the secrets. It's called Secrecy Department, 保密局. I'm sure there are better translations for that. I just call it Bureau of Secrecy. Oh, what a name. I don't know how to translate that. Anyway, there is such organization, and it's the provincial bureau that handles all the secrets. And so that organization, so maybe the court asked them to kind of validate and confirm that releasing such a recording did violate state secret, and they did. And so he was found guilty. Now, Mr. Huang is one of the very few courageous Chinese who are fighting the CCP in China. Very soon, with the passing of this new law, we'll see many Mr. Huang, because what happened to him will become commonplace. CCP will do to other ordinary Chinese citizens what they did to Mr. Huang. The new law has put every Chinese citizen at risk. Let me come back. Because according to some legal experts, anyone who posts information critical of the regime on the internet that are subsequently quoted by foreign press or other social media, or is used in a way negative to Beijing's or counterproductive to Beijing's liking, are at the risk of violating this new law. So if you make a comment about Xi Jinping or the CCP, and let's say you call them by names, such as calling them a fool, if your comment is later quoted by foreign media, you might have violated this anti-espionage law. Speaking of name calling, there's a joke. It goes, the premier, there's a Chinese premier. His name is Li Peng. He was the premier during the June 4th, the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. And he was the premier who supported Deng Xiaoping's order to open fire on the students. So Chinese people don't like him at all. So there were many jokes about him. And so there was one joke that goes like this. And someone shouted, Li Peng is an idiot in Tiananmen Square, right? Li Peng is his name, the name of the premier. So they shouted, Li Peng is an idiot in Tiananmen Square. And the person was arrested and was tried. And he was given a 7-year sentence. So this person asked the judge, he said, well, the maximum punishment for defamation is 3 years. Why do you give me a 7-year sentence? And the judge said, well, you didn't commit the crime of defamation. You commit the crime of revealing a state secret. So, so I think Xi Jinping and the CCP may very soon face the same joke, right? and this time they institutionalize it. They made it formal. So the social implication of this new law is anyone who uploads videos, pictures, or make posts to internet that seemed negative to the regime or that expose any social unrest, such as like what we've seen during the Foxconn employee walkout, the white paper movement, or the Village Bank customers' protests, they run the risk of being accused of revealing state secret when their social media contents are reported everywhere. Anyone who talks to foreign press and gave them opinion that are quoted by the press, and the view contradicts with Beijing, may violate the law. Anyone who provides data, information, insights, or anything that Beijing deems sensitive can be in trouble. Like I said, during COVID, when people working at the crematoriums giving out real statistics on the number of bodies that they cremate every day, could be violating this law. So it goes on and on. Now, think about it. If people in China who provide information to the outside world are deemed guilty, then on the other side, those foreign nationals who solicit information or even use the information they obtained also violate the law, no matter where they are. And that means foreign journalists in China are at higher risk. And even journalists based outside China may be at the risk if they one day go to China. Because, I mean, they're safe when they do the interviews or do the coverage. But if they go to Hong Kong or China one day, the CCP will find out what you did. And technically, you could be held accountable. So that's what happens to people inside China, and we're familiar with that. But I think the most dramatic impact is on foreign businesses. Foreign companies whose business involves collecting crucial information or data will have the risk of violating this law. And these companies include the accounting firms, the investment research firms, data analysis firms, consulting firms. Even foreign law firms, I think, are at risk, because if your client is a state-owned company or the case you handle involves a government agency or SOE, then you might have obtained or you might be exposed to state information that can be sensitive. So let me just give you some examples. In March, CCP police raided the Beijing office of an American due diligence firm called Mintz, M-I-N-T-Z, Mintz Group. Police detained all 5 employees of the company for unknown reasons. A few weeks later, the Shanghai office of the management consulting firm Bain was raided in a similar manner. Police also visited an office of an expert networking firm called Cap Vision. Cap Vision is headquartered in New York. They obviously they have an office in China. So they also visited that company. This is reported by Financial Times. It was part of a series of raids by the CCP on international consulting firms. And on February 23rd, Bloomberg reported that the Chinese government had instructed state-owned companies in January to not renew their contracts with the Big Four accounting firms. Offshore subsidiaries are allowed to continue to use U.S. auditors or foreign auditors, but parent companies are required to hire mainland Chinese or Hong Kong accounting firms. The goal is to protect the data of state-owned companies from leaking to foreign countries. So on March 17th, Deloitte Touche was fined 212 million yuan for failing to conduct adequate audit on China Huarong Asset Management Company. Now, Huarong has internal control issues. This is the company that has been sacked by Xi Jinping because the chairman was executed, right? Yeah. And so this is the company that's considered like white gloves, private company that exists to serve the CCP red families. Yeah. So anyway, so this company was sacked. Now, in terms of the fine, the company that had serious accounting um, violations, was only fined 800,000 yuan, whereas the auditor was fined 212 million. Yes, you heard that right. So the auditor, the accounting firm was fined 212 million yuan when the perpetrator was fined only 800,000. Beijing sent a clear message to foreign service companies. So from this, I conclude that professional service firms in China will have a difficult time because you access key client information, right? Like I said, accounting firms, research and data analysis firms, consulting firms, law firms, and all professional service firms, even training companies that serve the state-owned enterprises will have an increased risk of violating this anti-espionage law. They should be careful because they may inadvertently access information that your client doesn't think is sensitive, but the Chinese government does. The new law will also affect academic collaborations. It will be impossible for Western academic institutions to obtain information or data from their Chinese counterparts. The U.S. ambassador to China, what's his name? Last name Burns. Yeah, he gave a talk a few days ago at the Stimson Center, and he mentioned that as well. Same with NGOs. I don't think Beijing has allowed many foreign NGOs in China. Those that are allowed must be endorsed by the CCP, but any NGOs that currently have an operation in China should be careful. Not just professional service firms, other industries are at risk as well. You have seen in the news a senior executive working for the Japanese pharma, Astellas, was detained over espionage charges. I heard that his job is government and industry relations. And he's a senior executive who interfaces with government officials and get a sense of government policies and therefore set strategic investment decisions for the pharma. Apparently, this Japanese executive knows China very well because he's been working in China for over 20 years. But I think that's exactly, that might be where the risk is. I worry about people who have been in China long enough or for a very long time. I don't know if some of you are actually based in China who have been there or worked there for a long time. Because once you've been in China long enough as a foreign national, you obtained native insight and you obtain native knowledge. And you tend to make the mistake of believing that you've been there long enough and you're familiar with the CCP's politics. And if your job is government relations, you may even believe that you have developed a good relations with the local officials and therefore you are safe. But it's the contrary. I think that thinking is dangerous. Because it's not a good thing when you get too comfortable with the Chinese system. I think these multinational companies should rotate their employees based in China every few years. They should not put them there for like 20 years. It's just not good. Because like I said, it's not a good thing when you get too comfortable with the system. And it's also not good for the CCP officials to get too comfortable with you. In the end, the CCP always know more about you than you know about them. And that's the most dangerous aspect of working in China. No matter how much you think you know about them, no, they know more about you. Yeah, so many foreign nationals who have done business in China for a long time tend to make this mistake. Your knowledge and connections may be a liability, because of four risk factors. One, you know too much and you're too involved so that you lose that objectivity of assessing the situation. And that's particularly true in China. Two, you might have made the wrong political alliance within the CCP's internal political factions. And these factions are multifaceted. They could exist within the local government. It could exist within the central government. It could exist between the local and the central government. As a foreigner, it's very hard for you to judge whether you have made the right political alliance. And even if you think that you might have, if that person may fall out of favor. So that's always very risky. That's what I say foreign companies should not have their employees stay in China for too long. They should rotate them very quickly. And the third risk is your company might have been picked as a target by the regime, right? There are companies that the CCP would not, how to say, we try to keep a good relations, and there are companies that they don't care. So your company might have been picked as a target by the regime, and also your country is the target. So speaking of being picked as a target, on March 31st, China's Office of Cybersecurity Review announced that it will implement a cybersecurity review of American chip maker Micron Technology, and its products sold in China will be subject to review. The statement did not say the specific content of the review, nor did it specify which product will be reviewed. Did you notice a pattern here? All the companies I mentioned are American and Japanese firms. You don't see a European companies. Every company that I mentioned are either American, they're all American, except one Japanese firm. There's no European firm here. That just tells us Sino-US decoupling is inevitable. It's just so obvious. So these companies are picked for a reason, right? All right, so that's what will happen to these multinational companies. Now, let's talk about small business, right? So if you are an entrepreneur who does business in China on your own or with your small team, there's also something that I want to tell you. Do I have? Oh yeah, here's this guy. Before I do that, maybe I can hide that picture for a while. An article called "Praying for a Miracle" was published by Newsweek magazine on February 5th. Oh, actually, I do have a picture of that. What am I thinking? Here we go. It talks about the Americans detained in China. And it says that over 200 Americans are wrongfully detained in China. And one of them is a Chinese American from New York. His name is Li Kai. And that's this gentleman. And he was given a 10-year sentence for espionage at a secret trial in 2018. He was detained, I think, in 2016 and tried for in 2018, but it was a closed-door trial, and he was sentenced to 10 years. His son said that he's the only American held in China for espionage charges. His case went like this. So he is in export business. He sells American products to Chinese military and aerospace industries. Excuse me. His business dealings with China caught the attention of FBI because he sells American products to Chinese military, right? So FBI approached him wanting to know if his exports to China were in compliance with American laws. His talk with FBI is routine, didn't generate any problem for him, but that made the CCP very nervous. He was arrested at airport when he returned to Shanghai from the US. Ironically, this Mr. Li has had very good relations with the Chinese military and some officials, but that didn't help him. He was convicted of espionage and leaking secrets to the FBI. Now, according to the dossier that his son released, the documents he provided to FBI was public information that anyone can find on the internet. But that doesn't matter. China's or the CCP's definition of espionage is that if you talk to FBI and if you talk to CIA, the CCP sees you as a spy, even though you didn't provide any information, or even if you didn't provide any valuable information to them. But he, in that situation, he had to, because he's an American citizen. He had to address the concern from the American government, right? And he didn't release any sensitive Chinese information. He just did what he had to do in that situation. But no, that got him into trouble. So I think this is a high risk for people that do cross-border business with China, because his case, I think, it was rare. People say he was arrested, in retaliation for the trade war, because it happened during that time. But I think with the new law, this could be more commonplace. Now, in addition to wrongful detentions, the State Department now warns Americans of the risk of exit bans imposed on Americans in China. So the notice says, in most cases, U.S. citizens only become aware of an exit ban when they attempt to leave China, and there's no reliable mechanism or legal process to find out how long the ban might continue, or to contest it in a court of law. That's what the notice says. And U.S. citizens of Chinese descent are subject to additional scrutiny and harassment. And it says that Beijing seeks to gain bargaining leverage over foreign governments through the travel restriction. Now, during my research process, I found this one American. I don't know if you know his name. On or about April 14th, a Chinese court upheld a 2-year suspended death sentence for American citizen Mark, I think Sweden, who was allegedly involved in a flimsy drug case. He has been detained in China, in a Chinese prison since 2012. A United Nations working group concluded in 2020 that he had been arbitrarily detained in violation of international law and urged his immediate release. His mother said that Mark has lost half of his body weight and has lumps growing on his neck, and she feared for his life. So my advice is, my friends, don't go to China unless you absolutely have to. I don't want to add to that list of 200 more names, more Americans being detained in China arbitrarily. That's already too many. So what does Xi Jinping and the CCP want to accomplish from this? Don't they know that this is only alienating foreign investments and foreign businesses? Doesn't the CCP want to rescue its economy? I think in the case of Mark Sweden, I'm sorry if I pronounce his name incorrectly. I read that he was wrongfully charged and he refused to pay the local police a bribe when he was initially detained. Now, the CCP is keeping him there to save its face, because if the regime released him now, it's like admitting that they had wrongfully detained an American for over 10 years. CCP never admits mistakes, so they're just keeping him there to save face. And this is another warning I want to say. Sometimes Americans are very confident, right? A lot of people think, oh, they're not going to do anything to me, You know, the local police, the local police at the local level are very corrupt. They may do something totally crazy, and it's out of the central government's control. And so in that case, I think they might have detained Mark by mistake, and then they realized their mistake. They want him to pay some money and then release him, and he refused. And so one mistake, so they just stick to it. And once it really got too ugly, the central government is on their side, just trying to save face. So what I'm saying is, even though the Beijing authorities may not want to arbitrarily detain Americans, or I'm not saying that all the Americans detained in China are ordered to be detained by by Xi Jinping, the central leadership, but there's so many corrupt police everywhere in China. You don't know what they can do, right? So that's what I think. It's a little out of control, and it's highly risky for you to go to China. Sorry, that's a little side note. Coming back to why does the CCP want to implement this law that will only alienate foreign business? Well, I think the regime feels threatened. First and foremost, by the instability factor. Um, because it has used lies to cover up its many problems, not just economic problems, but many problems, social problems, political problems, the problems in the military. So there's just a lot of problems that it's trying to cover up with lies. But these problems are becoming more and more difficult to hide. So the so-called China's economic rise or miracle is built upon many people's suffering. Now the lies are being exposed. Chinese citizens are speaking up and sending information to the outside world, like we've seen in the Foxconn walkout, the white paper movement, and so on and so forth. So if Beijing doesn't shut down the communication between the Chinese and the outside world and stopping the West from accessing its information, and not just its key information, any information, right? It knows its lies will be exposed soon. And it knows this more than anyone else. So compared to the declining economy, saving the regime from falling is far more important than making some money. To them, losing money is more tolerable than losing control, because it's in the end, it's the people who will lose money. It's people who will live in poverty, not them. The CCP leaders will live comfortably, regardless of the situation of the economy. So, so from this perspective, they want to save the regime um, from falling apart. So, they have to. They feel that they have to implement this law to put up the guard, to protect the information. Um, that's why it's doing this. Will they be successful? I don't think so. I think, like I said, they are only creating, you know, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of more of Mr. Huang, the man who have been fighting the CCP since the year 2000 for the past 23 years, who has been detained 3 times, but he has not given up. He's still fighting. So they're only creating many more versions of him, and that's not good for the regime. All right, so I've talked for 40 minutes. Let me see if people have questions for me. All right. Someone said China's secret police, and this notice in Chinese, it says spy activities means any exchange of non-government propaganda. That's true. That's a very good way to put it. The Chinese definition of spy activity is the exchange of information that's different from government propaganda. Um, Oops, sorry. Um, Let me go through all the super chats questions first. William Warren, give CCP more control and it will destroy itself. True, I agree. Sinan, thank you for the donation. Thank you, Sinan. Um, Samir Khan. She has consolidated total power for himself. Does he need to go for war with Taiwan to retain power? All reports suggest war is inevitable, but why? That's a very complex question. Um, he has consolidated total power for him. Does he need to go to war with Taiwan to retain power? Uh, he has. My answer to that is he needs to go to war in order to survive a political crisis. Whether that political crisis is challenge, his political enemy, internal political enemy challenging him, or social instability as a result of the collapsing economy. Um, when he feels his power is seriously threatened, he needs an external, he needs to export the internal tumult, what do you call it? Internal instability externally to justify a tighter control on Chinese society. All right, let me see. Jeff Ramos. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Jeff Ramos. Like, does the CCP use internet espionage through cables, or do they have a system like Starlink? Are you talking about their own espionage activity? Not their counter espionage, not their counter espionage system, right? I'm not sure what you are asking. So I don't think they have anything like Starlink. I don't think so. Charles Womack, when one kills, exiles, or imprisons all of the technocrats, what could go wrong? When one kills, exiles, and imprisons all of the technocrats, what could go wrong? Um, Many things will go wrong. Well, it's only relative, right? Well, first of all, it's impossible for him to kill, exile, or imprison all of them. There are always some. Very sadly, there are always some Chinese CCP officials who want to go along with the top leader because they fear of losing what they have. So no matter how many people you exile, like you said, kills, exiles, and imprisons, he will always be able to find some that are willing to work for him, for the benefits, for what they can get in return. So even though those people are getting fewer and fewer, or smaller and smaller in number, but there are always those. Yeah, because they don't risk anything. They don't have a far vision. They don't have a long enough perspective to see that what they're doing is really hurting them in the long run. They're just very focused on what's today, what's good for me today. They don't think beyond tomorrow. I'll just follow the leader, do whatever he asks me to do. And there are always people like that in China, unfortunately. Frosty Flake, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, I got a lot of comments. Let me see. Okay, questions people have for me. I'm going to go back a little bit and see what questions people have for me. Um, So if you have questions for me, put my name in the front so I know it's addressed to me because there are a lot of conversations here. Let me see. Uh, mm, I'm trying to find my name. It's not easy to find it. There are a lot of conversations. Okay. All right. I think I'm. Oh, here we go. From IDK0. So the peasants will take forever to uprise against the CCP. Will it ever finish? Okay, the people that I just talked about are not the peasants. There are the CCP officials, because the question was about the technocrats, right? The people who do the work for Xi Jinping. But the peasants would. Um, I don't know. It depends on how drastic, how drastic. If the drama that we've seen that has been unfolding in China in the past couple of weeks continue on a much larger scale and to a worse degree, I don't think these people can survive for very long. I mean, think about it. I use the analogy. I mean, the story that man with 50 pigs who, I mean, if you lose all of that, if that's all he has and it's taken away from him, I mean, what can he do, right? So, so let me see. From Ed C. I go to China to collaborate in scientific research. I trust my colleagues in China. Should I not work with them? Science is a global activity. Yes, science is a global activity. And I'm sure your colleagues in China um, are okay to work with. But there is the risk. You don't know if your project one day become sensitive to the regime. And when the regime finds out that you have access or you had access to some data that they later found to be sensitive, then it's not good for you, right? And they may first, um, coerce you into collaborating with them, or ask you to do something that you don't want to do, and then they will use it against you. So it all. I'm not saying that it will happen to everyone, but I'm saying that there's a risk. If you are doing something, if you're involved in a project that seems important to the regime, even if it's not now, but it will be a year from now or 3 years from now, that's a risk. That's a risk. Yeah. And you don't know when that will become an issue. So, it's almost like you work with a time bomb that may never detonate or that may detonate. So it's like, why? If you can't handle that, then I'm sure it's fine. But for some people, they don't want to live with a time bomb that might detonate one day, right? So, but that's a very good question. I know a lot of people are in that situation. Um, yeah. And the other thing is, even if you might be okay, but your colleagues may be in trouble. So, it's all uncertainties. Yeah. Let me see. Moonwalker, hello Lei. Is the South China Morning Post YouTube channel a CCP mouthpiece, or is it more unbiased? I think right now, I think anything come out of Hong Kong, it cannot be independent, right? I mean, South China Morning Post has had a wonderful history. It was owned by Ma Yun, Jack Ma, and some people say Jack Ma, and behind Jack Ma is the Jiang Zemin faction, Xi Jinping's political enemy on the other side. But that was all, years ago. So things might have changed. But I would say at this point, any media, any press coming out of Hong Kong, you can no longer say they're independent. But of course, there's a difference between South China Morning Post and the People's Daily or CGTN. There's a difference. So that's what I can say. Um, Patricia O'Shea, what's the CCP's ultimate goal? To control the world? Yes. Didn't Mr. Xi Jinping said that he wants to build the community of common destiny? Yeah, their goal, it's stated. They publicly stated they want to build this global community, and that shares the same vision that's with them, and that's their goal. They want to, in the Communist Manifesto, they want to liberate humanity, humankind. That's their ultimate goal, and they're not shy about it. Like, do average Chinese person are in debt like the U.S. Persons on average? Yes, I think they're more in debt than the Americans because of real estate, because the burden of mortgage is the percentage, the real estate price, the weight of the real estate price to their income is much higher than the weight here in the US. You cannot see my face anymore? What happened? Can you guys see me? Can you guys see me or not? The banner. I don't know what to do with the banner. How do I get rid of it? I'm just not very high tech. What happened to that ban? How do I get rid of that banner? Hmm. What do I click? I don't even know where that banner is. I know that. How do I get rid of this? Oh, I think it's. Oh, this is. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I'm back. Oh, Lei is very low tech. Okay. Any other questions? Uh, Sorry. I lost track. Okay, from Vern Deuker. Personal question. Is it okay to visit family in China? Sister-in-laws, mother-in-law, brother-in-law with my Chinese wife for a month. I think personal visit is okay. I'm more concerned with people who do business in China. Yeah. All right. So let me see. Oh, we got a question. All right. Okay. So any other questions? If not, I'll end it here. No? Okay. So I got from Silas Larson. So is it certain that the CCP now is telling farmers what to grow? Yeah, they have they it's very clear that they want to tell the farmers what to grow grains, soybeans, all these strategic agricultural products that it imports from the United States, from other countries. It wants its farmers to grow them. Alan Mando, do you think the U.S. law firms operating in China need to be concerned about the Espionage Act? Yes, I said yeah. Probably right now, not so much as the accounting firms, but I think sooner or later. I mean, how are they going to find clients? There's so many big law firms in China, Western law firms. I mean, their clients, the people who can afford them are the large companies. But these large companies, um, when you're involved, aren't you involved in their internal affairs that, I mean, especially if I don't think they can get the case if it's a SOEs, right? The state-owned companies. So, first is the accounting firms, and I think law firms sooner or later. I mean, even if the CCP do not cause troubles for you, you just won't be able to find any client because the Western companies will be leaving or are leaving, and then the SOEs won't hire you. And the private companies, there are what, few and far in between. We're losing them. So they'll have to leave because there's no business. So that's even if the CCP do not, cause trouble like they did with Deloitte Touche, they're forced out because no business. All right. From Tim Stevens, she does thinking for China. One person. There are 40 million people in Canada thinking solving problems. Which country is better off, Canada or China, for the number of problems solved? Are you asking, is it better to have one person thinking the problems, uh, or you have 40 million people thinking the solution for a problem? I think 40 million people thinking about the solution of the problem is better than one person. How do you know that one person can get it right? Aren't you taking a big risk? What if he gets it wrong? Then 1 billion people's future would be screwed. I think it's better off to have more people, have the citizens, decide their future. Um, from Jeff Ramos, Deloitte case would be more common. I think it will be common, but it probably won't. I mean, that's a show trial. Think about it. 212 million yuan fine for the accounting firm. That's what? That's 30, yeah, that's 30 million US dollars. And then not only that, suspension of 3 months, suspension of operations for 3 months. So you can't run your business operation in China for 3 months. It's a show trial. I don't think it will make this kind of fine. It's basically done to send a message. So I don't think it will happen very often. Yeah. Peter, CCP under Deng created special economic zones, which provided huge incentives for US businesses to set up manufacturing plants in those zones. Why are they undoing all this? Well, they're still setting up economic zones. Didn't Beijing just announce the special zone in Hainan, the Hainan Island? It's a new special economic zone, and you could even set up universities. Like they encourage Western universities and colleges to set up schools there, but you need to. I think you need to have a party committee at the school, something to that effect. Yeah. So they're still doing that. All right. Okay, that seems to be the end of the questions. Well, I really enjoy talking to you through these questions. I hope this is helpful, and I'll see you in a few days. All right, thank you very much, and good night or good day. Okay, bye bye.